Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have a very empowering show coming right up with special guest, Emily Francis. And she's here to share with us her new book, Whole Body Healing. Create your own path to physical, emotional, energetic, and spiritual wellness. Now, many of you know Emily. She's been on the show before, and she's also the host of the weekly radio show All About Healing on the Healthy Life Radio Network. She's the author of The Body Heals Itself, Stretch Therapy, and of course, the book we're here to talk about today, Whole Body Healing. Now, Emily has a master's degree in physical education and human performance, and her work has been featured in Elephant Journal, Today.com, Spirituality and Health, and many more. So let's welcome to the show, Emily Francis.
Thank you, Marianne, for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
You know, what a joy it is to have you here and to talk about this book. I was so excited to hear that it came out.
Oh, me too. It's been a long time. It's been a lot of research to make this book happen.
So why don't you share with us the inspiration behind writing this book?
I would be happy to. So my last book was called The Body Heals Itself, How Deeper Awareness of Your Muscles and Their Emotional Connection Can Help You Heal. And that comes from my years of hands-on clinical body work and the emotions in the way that the body stores. And then what I realized, too, though, is that in order to achieve true, lasting, and sustainable healing changes, people need to understand the various aspects or layers within the body. And what we really haven't done a good job teaching is who to go to for which condition, and really learning that we have a valuable amount of helpers for our healing that are on the mainstream, but also are not on the mainstream. So as the host of All About Healing on Healthy Life, I have a lot of people from around the world that I get to interview and talk about different healing possibilities and healing modalities, and I have a child with recovery out of an autism spectrum diagnosis, and I recovered myself out of a very severe anxiety and panic disorder, and I did it by approaching the body in the same way. So with different conditions, we still had tremendous results because I finally learned about the body memory system and also the different aspects, and missing one of those aspects can lead to a long time and a lot of healing time wasted. And so I put this book together to help other people know what's out there around the world and in your neighborhood that might change your life.
How important is that? Thank you so much for sharing your story. I know we've had the honor of having you on the show before to talk about your other book, and it's quite impactful as well. I was very excited to hear about this one being released. And yeah, I think people right now, especially we're in this age where, it's really difficult to get outside to do things, and people are kind of maybe noticing things in their bodies that they haven't really paid attention to before.
You know, I think that's happening so much because your body signals and has its own language, and it's constantly trying to convey its communication sources to us, but we don't understand it. So most of the time, we chalk things up to coincidence. Coincidence is not real, first of all. It doesn't exist. There's no such thing really as coincidence, in my opinion, especially when it comes to the body. And what happens, too, is sometimes the body will naturally correct itself. You can call it autocorrect or self-correct. And then it's really funny how fast we forget that something bothered us until something comes back or links into what used to cause us pain. And I do want to say, when it comes to this book, I put out there who's available in the healing fields, but I've had already a lot of people emailing me and asking me very specific health conditions, and I don't write for specific health conditions. I write for everybody, and it's up to you and your specific condition to find your path. And I'm just trying to give you as many tools as humanly possible to create your best path. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And I think for a lot of, people, they're looking at going, okay, so where do I even start? And that's probably where we should, start from this discussion here too. It's like, okay, so someone's like having issues. They're not quite sure what's happening with them. How do they get started?
Well, if it's actually a health condition, so let me start there, because some of these things, you don't have to be sick to read this book at all. But let's just say that for the sake of argument, you aren't feeling your best. So where you start is to get a correct diagnosis. And that doesn't just mean going to your doctor. It means you have to know where you're starting from. You have to know what you're playing with. And I talk about this because look at the Lyme disease tests alone in this country are consistently wrong. So people take 2 to 3 years to even get the right diagnosis. So what we start with in the book is your physical body, and then we go into who's the specialist under every single organ and part of your body. So if something is acting off, first you have to know who to go see and what kind of tests you need to have and what kind of research is possible. But that's if you're sick. If you're not sick, but still something is off, I teach you how to do a body scan and start to ask a deeper dialogue of yourself so that you can start putting together some information. Because where we get started, again, is still a diagnosis. It doesn't mean a diagnosis of illness. It just means you have to have your concrete answers of information so that you can actually move in the direction that's going to yield the fastest, easiest route for results.
Well, you brought up a few things that I want to touch on. Let's start with the memory system of the body. So what is that? What does it look like, and how do we tune into that?
I love that question. I love that question because it's a broader answer than you think it's going to be, and here's why. We have cellular memory, we have muscle memory, we have tissue memory, we have our mind mental memory. And I don't believe they're the same thing, but they all work for the same greater cause. But I believe that we have to feed the different memory systems in the body. So like muscle memory is very different than what our mind might remember. Or cellular memory. Cellular memory has become recently a catch-all term. Same with tissue memory. And they're not exactly the same, but they exist. So cellular memory can have things like the genetic lines. You know, there's even now real research that talks about down the DNA lines of Holocaust survivors are passed through the genetic codes. So even though a person that wasn't actually involved in the Holocaust will still have a repeat body response to similar stimulus from the genetic codes. That's totally different than a muscle memory response and different than a tissue memory. So tissues we talk about is your fascia and in cases the muscle, but also like Chinese medicine, they believe that your memories move through the blood and plasma. So every part of your body sort of contains a way that it has a response to memory and actually stores memory. But the one that I'm the most familiar with is muscle memory itself because that's what I work with in my daily life and practice.
That's very fascinating. I think a lot of people, they think about this, they don't realize how much the body stores, and that could be impacting their health.
In a big way, in a really big way. And, you know, sometimes it becomes overwhelming. So I don't want to say all this to overwhelm somebody, but I do feel like this is going into the next book that'll be out next year, but when a person is involved in a trauma, and a trauma is a really big term, so it doesn't mean that you have to have had the most god-awful thing, but anything that really slices into your body changes the memory of how you view things, and it changes the tracks. But when a person is in a trauma, so let's say a car accident, a lot of times when you talk to them, they have a haze around the memory because their mind sort of ejected from the situation because they can't really remember, or it's a gift of the mind that in trauma you disconnect from the body. But when it comes to your body, it doesn't have that same luxury. It never disconnected, and it has all the facts stored within it. So when I look at healing now, my approach into healing really kind of, I don't want to say bypasses the mind, but I'm going to have to say bypasses the mind because I want to get the facts from the body. So for me in my body work practice, I don't let people tell me a lot of their story because I want to hear what their body has to say. And I finally learned the right vocabulary to be able to articulate it enough to share it in my work and in my books to make people understand, oh my gosh, you're right, I'm really hazy in this part, but my body has this memory, and you don't know it until you sort of tap into it. This is where, like, mental practices like EFT, emotional freedom technique, taps into the body and has a direct dialogue and communication into the body. But me, I'm a body worker. I'm a clinical massage therapist. How many of those people are writing books? And so I have this really genuine viewpoint of the body that most people just don't have.
Yeah, you have a very unique perspective when it comes to this because you bring so much into it. We look at, you've got it's the mental, physical, emotional, spiritual components that you bring into this.
It is. And I've been really fortunate because I work on people. I'm not really that much in practice, but there's certain people that I'll take. And what I have found through many years is that people find me at the point of needing to make a shift. So nobody comes to me and goes, "Oh, I need to relax." That is not what I do, ever. And I'm very specialized. But people tend to find me when they need to shift in their perspective and mostly in their spiritual life, but also understanding that there's a layer of energy in your body, the energy body, that is often overlooked, and that's where the miracles happen to live. So I love that.
Well, that's good because I wasn't going to ask you about relaxing because I think most of us right now, we've got so much stress going on. There's so much we're being bombarded with. I mean, so, from the people that are reaching out to you and the people that you're working with, what are you commonly seeing as some of the issues that we're dealing with today?
Autoimmune disease. A lot of people reach out to me with autoimmune disease, and I have to tell you that it's actually one of the fields that I know the least about because people that have autoimmune diseases generally don't like to be touched because their body's so sensitive. So I don't see them in my practice. A lot of people ask me about fibromyalgia, and I just don't have a lot to give there because of that, because there's like 12 points on the body that you touch, and if they're in pain, you lead to that assessment. Well, then obviously I don't see a lot of people that have fibromyalgia because it's not comfortable to lay on a table and have somebody touch you. So I do find a lot of autoimmune, but what I look at in autoimmune illness is more the spiritual perspective and the energy and the emotional. And I do believe that autoimmune illness is attributed to inflammation, but also there is an emotional component. Something has tripped up the wires in your body. And I would love for people to be able to do some internal work and face some of those scenarios and let their body tell the messages of it so that we can make some differences. But it's a tough one to navigate. That is what I would say is one of the hardest ones because, one, it often gets misdiagnosed, and two, people don't really understand the nature of it. But even in this new book, I have a whole section on the pain body. I also have a section on the pleasure body because people don't talk about pleasure enough, but that's a different thing. But in the pain body, there was actually a research done with mice, and I have this in the book, that they have been able to track that there's a minuscule second, beyond a second, less than a second, of when a person retrieves a memory and then feels pain. Or has a stimulus and then feels pain. So with autoimmune, they directly studied to autoimmunity. And so they found that with a particular chemical, they can block the retrieval of pain based on the stimulus. So things are coming now to the forefront in the fact that autoimmune is not random. And I think that unfortunately for a really long time, we thought of it more as an idiopathic situation where there's no cure and no cause. And you can't really explain any of it. But there's finally getting to be some research in there because the emotions are a huge, huge part of getting sick and getting better. Without the emotional component and the energy component, it's almost impossible to pull yourself through something into a place that you really feel not just able to deal with life, but happy to be in your life and in your body.
Isn't that just such a big difference? Because a lot of people, until we've had this time of isolation, they're probably not really even paying attention to their body like they probably should. So when you look at being happy with your body and in this place where you're like, hey, I'm really content with how my body is, a lot of people I don't really feel are there.
No, I think it's a conditioned response as well, because being happy with your body is different than being happy in your body. those aren't even the same things, because when I think of being happy with my body, I think of what I look like. When I think of being happy in my body, I think of what I feel like. And those generally aren't the same thing either. So conditionally, especially women, we're really taught, I think at the onset of puberty, maybe even before, to dislike our bodies. Even if you're beautiful to whatever standard somebody thinks, I think we're conditioned to all of a sudden start picking it apart. Because if you meet somebody who genuinely likes what they look like or are happy with themselves, you almost think they're arrogant. You almost put them down. They immediately separate themselves from the herd. And that's really, it's a sad thing. Like, I have young girls. We stand in front of the mirror and do, look how beautiful, and we do the physical, but then we talk about, look at this brilliant mind. You're so creative and sensitive and precious. You know, I do like a list of 20 things at a time, or at least 10, because I need them to know how valuable they are. And being happy in our body is is the goal for me and for people that I work with is you know, this is a story that I actually put in the book, but it's really significant to me. I was in the airport. It was morning. I was so tired. And I went into the bathroom to use the bathroom before we got, had to board. And it was just me. And then one TSA agent came in. And she used the bathroom, and she was washing her hands. And I don't know why. She didn't even notice that I was standing there, or she didn't care. But I was about 3 mirrors away. And she's looking at herself in the mirror, and she's going, I look so fat. Ugh. And she's making these sounds and then making these faces at herself. And she's really doing affirmation work of the worst kind, because she's locking it in to the cellular memory and the physical and the tissue memory. All of it's taking it in, because you're looking at yourself in the mirror and doing it as an affirmation. And when she started to walk out, I blocked her. And I stood in front of her and I said, first of all, you're beautiful. And she kind of like, ugh. And I said, second of all, should something happen to you, God forbid anything happen to you, you will wish to God that you looked and felt exactly like you do right now.
Good for you.
And she got teary. Yeah, she got teary-eyed. And she was like, oh, you're right. And I said, you know what? You're beautiful, you're strong, and you're powerful, and it's time to change that dialogue. And I know I changed her. I know I affected change right there, because she was so affirmative in her version that I became equally as affirmative talking to her and making sure that I looked deeply into her eyes, because she was locking it inside her body. You don't realize that. When you look at yourself in the mirror and you say something negative, you're locking it into all of those different body memory systems, and they're listening to what you're saying, and you're the guide.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, we look at Dr. Emoto's work that he did with water, and just, when people are saying kind things to water, how the cellular changes happen within the water structure. Yeah.
It got rid of chlorine. I think he had like 250 people standing around the water to say thank you, just repeating thank you. And it changed the structure to where it was no longer chlorinated water. And yet, why is it that we don't understand that miracles are so common? We think they have to be really huge, but miracles are everywhere all the time. And I believe in miracle healing, and that's on page 1 of my book. I believe in miracles and miracle healing, because we don't have enough faith in ourselves and our ability to heal, and in our body's ability to change direction. And a lot of it is because we're not guiding it well.
Yeah, not at all. And it's interesting, getting back to that flight attendant. She probably has had programming from her mom, and maybe her mom has had programming as well. And this is something that might have been like a generational thing. Maybe it's something she just feels about herself personally, obviously, because she's saying it out loud. But to have that shift in a way that really kind of shifts perspectives, I mean, what a gift that is.
I was so tired, and but it felt so right. There's no way I could let her walk by me. There was just no way. Knowing all the things that I know and letting somebody hurt themselves like that, that's self-harm. We think about self-harm as things like cutting or causing ourselves physical pain. But to look at yourself and lock that into yourself is a self-harming behavior. And we have got to change our dialogue. And I don't care what we weigh. It's not a numbers game. Does your body work? Are you able to be functional? Are you able to do some of the things that you really want to do? And then if not, then we have to start from square one and get our right path of information so that we can begin to see what the options really are. I mean, even my acupuncturist treated somebody for Bell's palsy. So if you guys are listening, Bell's palsy is a paralysis of one side of the face. In the United States, it's considered an idiopathic illness. No cause, no cure. They cannot describe it. They have some medication, but it really doesn't help. And people leave with Bell's palsy always having a droop on that one side of their face. Now, Chinese medicine, she cleared it in 2 sessions, and there is no trace of Bell's palsy in his face. I know this because I met him, and he's the reason that I started seeing that acupuncturist who became one of my best friends in the whole world and is one of the people that helped me research for this book. And how amazing is that you can go to a different style of medicine and they have a description for it. So one of the other big parts of this book is my encouraging that the 3 biggest medical systems in the world are Western allopathic medicine, Chinese medicine, and Ayurvedic medicine. And they're totally different in the way that they approach the body. But if you can't get the answers or the results you're looking for, I am begging you with all my heart and giving you all of the information in this book to give you a different route.
How important is that? And so when you started researching these other methods of healing, what started you on that path? What was the first one that you came in contact with?
Well, when I first started researching this was because I fell down in my life and sat it out. I started suffering from such bad anxiety and panic. I went from being a kickboxing and yoga teacher and kung fu and tai chi and all these exercises, and I had a degree in exercise science, and I was your cheerleader. You know, I cheered in college, and I ran a corporate health club. I was the person that you saw for motivation. And then I never dealt with my father's death, which happened when I was a teenager. I turned 25, I stopped drinking, and everything came to head. And I really stepped out of my life completely. So I first started looking for healing for myself because it was really to that point of, I don't actually know how I'm going to survive this. I don't want to go anywhere, but I also can't even be functional as a member of society anymore in my life. So the first place I went was psychology. I went to a therapist. And it just really wasn't the best match. But the next places that I started going to was I went to a Native American medicine person, and I went to a person that channels, and I went to a person that is a psychiatrist, which is a doctor for the mind. And I tried different psychology, which is different for your behaviors. I went to EMDR therapy and hypnotherapy. I mean, I started piling it on because I was just begging for any kind of relief inside myself because I was living in complete chaos and I had no way of figuring out how to get out. And it was all in my body, so you can't escape it. And then when you start having that, your body starts breaking down. And then I was getting all these crazy physical diagnoses from different doctors, and I had like an inhaler because they never even tested me for asthma, but they just started prescribing inhalers because of my shortness of breath, which was panic. And so then I started thinking, I had to go back later to a doctor and go, why do you guys keep filling this prescription? I'm not an asthmatic. And they said, oh my gosh, you're not? I just assumed you were because the first doctor prescribed this. And I said, I don't have asthma. But when you have such a breakdown in the mental system, then your physical body follows suit again. So I started thinking, I'm not healthy. That was my mantra all the time. I'm fragile. I'm going to break. I'm going to break at any minute. What if the what ifs can kill you. The what ifs can take your whole life apart. And my what ifs were, what if I pass out right here and I don't actually die and then people know I'm crazy? What if I stop breathing? What if and everything became what if. I would walk into a room and think, what if I pass out? Who knows CPR in this room? And it was a self-perpetuating, isolated hell that got so out of control that I just had to step out of my life, and I just let really solid years pass me by. And then I had to learn. And this is the thing, and I always hesitate about this particular bit of information in writing it in my book, but I'm always happy to share it. And it's that I was adamantly opposed to medication. Adamantly. So for 7 years, I suffered with this anxiety and panic with only like 5 years of not telling people about it. So not only was I suffering, but I was so good at faking it. And then it became too hard to fake anymore. But I went to a psychotherapist. His name is Tom Rutledge, and he's the author of Embracing Fear. And I was reading his book, and I wrote him a letter that basically said, I'm a phony and a failure, and I thought I could cure myself through spiritual practices, and it turns out that I've failed at everything. And he wrote me back, and he was like, wow, wow, the way you talk to yourself is so dangerous. And he said, clearly you've done a lot of work, but you are missing a really key part. And this changed my life. He said, the brain and the mind are not the same thing. And he said, the mind is where your thoughts live and your behavior patterns, and you're doing a ton of work around your mind, but your brain is an organ. And he said, if it was your heart or your liver or your kidneys, you wouldn't hesitate to correct it and save your life. And he said, what is your deal about medication? And because of him, I tried a child's dose of an anti-anxiety medicine. And honestly, Marianne, I got my life back. And I'm not on the medicine anymore, but I took it long enough to retrain my body systems, what it felt like to function at a healthy level. And I had to be on it long enough for my body to relearn the tracks within the memories. And honestly, that's how I started understanding memory system, was that my body had to relearn and my brain had to relearn what it felt like to be healthy again. And because of all the other work I had done, when I finally was given that nourishment and corrected diet, if you will, it's not a food, it's a behavior pattern, but I claimed my life again. And I had the other tools already in place to make them finally work and everything locked in. And so I feel like I came back from the dead and reclaimed my life and lived and began my new life, which is that if you're thinking, I wish I was, then what are you doing? Don't sit on your butt and wish you were. Like, how do we make that different? How do we make us get up and do it then? And for me, it did have to come down to that medicine, and people were mad at me. I had people in my holistic community that took it very personally that I finally decided to try medicine and told me I was a faker, and they were so disappointed in me that I tried this. And so I always put in my books, there's no shame in that game. I don't come into your healing with my judgment of what you need to do, because I'm not you, and you're not me. And I listened to way too many people along the way and let way too many people make decisions for me regarding my health and healing. And once I took my power back, it was over. There's nobody left. And that's why I advocate and why there's a spiritual section in this book, is because I now do deep meditation to get my answers for what's next from spirit and not from people that don't know any better than me. It was a long answer, but that's my real honest answer. Like I can't not tell that story because it was so huge, and because healing didn't come to me just because I studied it. Healing came to me because I live it.
Yeah, it really is a journey. But, how many of us are going through that exact same journey in one way or another, where we're, struggling with different healing aspects or different things, mind, body, soul, you name it, that we're trying to work through. And, having some kind of reference point is great. But I think, I love how you also talk about, you went on the medication, and that's what it's there for. Being spiritual doesn't mean you give up everything that modern science has to offer. You really kind of dovetail them both together in a way that uniquely fits you.
And I also think, and I think I bring a unique perspective to the healing because I do not turn away from one style over the other. So just because I advocate a holistic wellness lifestyle does not in any way negate that I completely support our Western medicine and what it can do. Now, do I think we overprescribe? Yes. Was I lucky that I only took a child's dose and didn't need a bigger dose? Yes. But I took it for 3 years. It's not like I took it for a week. I took it long enough for my body to reactivate itself and remember. And it was scary to get off of it. I won't lie. It was a big jump of courage. And I got off of it because we were going to try to get pregnant. It wasn't because, hey, I think I'm great now. It was, I can't do this. I don't want to get pregnant and be on medicine. I don't want to do this to my children. And I'm so grateful. And for some reason, by the grace of God and by whatever hormones changed, I've never had to go back. And that's huge. And I can't explain why. I just know that I now have all the tools in place to stay ahead. It doesn't mean I don't feel anxious. It just means that it doesn't take me down anymore.
Oh, yeah. I mean, everyone has moments where they feel anxious or there's stress, or there's worry. That's part of the human experience. It all depends on how we process that information and move forward. And, I think a lot of people get into this place where it can be very debilitating, where we're like, we get it and we're like, ooh, what do I do now? Or I can't do anything,
It's such a self-perpetuating cycle, and everybody's exit point out of the circle is different. And what woke me up might be something totally different than what wakes somebody else up. But when you get in that cycle, you start to feel so incredibly unhealthy. It doesn't matter if you're drinking green shakes every day of your life and you're eating perfect things when you still feel like you're a lunatic. On the inside, you're not healthy. And so, and it's interesting because I do feel like I claimed my life and I am truly as happy as I look. And I act like. And it baffles some people. So I have a lot of old friends that'll reach out to me and say, I got to know how you did it. I have to know because I'm losing myself in this, especially right now. People are losing themselves. But what we forget is that a spiritual breakthrough looks like complete and utter destruction. It's not pretty. Yeah. It's not like all of a sudden you go, I'm better. Like, it's a hard-earned journey, and it is not pretty, and it's very personal. So even when you're on these journeys, people can stand with you, but they can't help you really.
Well, and the really positive thing is that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. They don't have to stay where they're at. There is healing. There's a process, and it's a personal journey. Yes, some of them are very hard, but it can at least get you there.
And I love that I put as many quick reference charts in the back of the book as well, because it's easy to look over and see and then go, oh, you know what, I do want to try the Rosen method. Oh, what is that sophrology?
Well, on that note, we're going to pause here for a quick break. We've been speaking with Emily Francis, author of Whole Body Healing, and you've been listening to Moments with Marianne. We'll be right back after these messages.
Internationally recognized and award-winning author Judy Goodman works and teaches outside the box of limited thinking. Working with people from every walk of life, her goal is to empower you to be the best you can be, no matter what the challenge is. Born with the gift of seeing beyond our normal vision, she has an extraordinary gift of working with every challenge. Teaching beyond conventional wisdom, her work is described as life-changing. Visit judygoodman.com. That's judygoodman.com.
There comes a moment when you realize you're somewhere special, when you discover that each beautiful creature that you see has been rescued from a life of absolute horror and brought to this incredibly free place. Here's where their lives were forever changed and where yours will as well. Discover over 500 tigers, bears, and lions at the brand new visitor center at the Wild Animal Sanctuary just outside Denver. For more information, visit wildanimalsanctuary.org. Discover true freedom at the Wild Animal Sanctuary.
Have you ever had the sense that your thoughts might actually be doing something? Ancient secrets of manifesting have been masterfully revealed in the award-winning book Manifesting 123 by Ken Elliott. For the first time, the author's experiences and stories in this book describe exactly how your thoughts can create anything. You've been doing this all your life, but it's never been fully explained for you until now. Visit manifesting123.com for more information today. Manifesting123.com.
Welcome back to Moments with Marianne. We're here today with special guest Emily Francis, who's sharing with us her new book, Whole Body Healing. So welcome back, Emily.
Thank you, Marianne. I love being here.
Oh my goodness, what a joy it is that we get to spend this time together. Absolutely love this book. I think this book is a huge game changer, and I'm sure a lot of people are feeling the same way.
Thank you so much. And I hope people do. It's a resource book. I really want people to know that because I've been getting a lot of emails lately about this book with very specific illnesses. And I have to say, this book is not for the sick, and it doesn't link to any illness. It links to understanding what part of our body might be off balance and what team of helpers that requires to help us heal.
I love that. Well, I don't want to go too far ahead, but I'd love for you to share with us what the 5 pillars of wellness are, because I think a lot of people get a little confused. It's like, what is wellness and how does this even relate to my experience?
Okay, great. So the 5 pillars for whole body wellness is food and diet, proper sleep, proper stress control, and attitude, mindset, and movement. And if you can get a hold, not to where it's perfect, but if you can approach all 5 of those pillars and get them into a balancing working order, you're going to experience an improvement in your health and overall well-being.
That's so important. And, we hear about, getting enough sleep as a keyword all the time. So how do people do that if they have like a family at home? It's got to be really tough.
It's really tough. And, I write about it exactly like that because different people sleep according to where they're at in their life. So people that don't have children or maybe that are older and their children are grown have a different approach into their sleep. It can be a lot more of a peaceful sleep. People that are younger might not have a peaceful approach to sleep, even if they don't have kids, because they might be in college cramming for exams or drinking a lot or out partying or eating really junky food. So the approach that we take into sleep, really, you have to keep in mind where you're at in your life and what cycle of life you're in. But the approach is to get as much of the deep sleep as you can. And one of the things that I talk about is I am not a great sleeper. My best sleep is at the beginning of the night really early, and then I wake up in the middle of the night, and a lot of times I'll write, and then I go back to bed. So my deeper sleeps are the beginning and the end cycle of a nighttime. So you have to know how you sleep best, and then instead of making it so stressful, like I don't lay in bed and think, okay, if I fall asleep now, I'll get this many hours of sleep. I don't do that anymore. So instead, I either get up and write, or I do a lot of time in prayer in the hours of the night that are for me, that are mine. And so I take advantage of that. And ideally, other people that really study sleep would say, oh, you turn off everything at least 1 hour before you go to sleep, and then you sleep really calm and comfortably with no distractions, and you wake restful and your body is working at optimum levels. And that is awesome. But for me, it's just not the way that I work. And it would be not fair to present it like that when that's not my life. So I tried to give a pretty wide view of our approach into sleeping. And I even offer a sleep meditation on my website. And I collaborated with a hypnotherapist producer. And we do the whole thing going into sleep and relaxing our body. And then the music keeps playing deep enough and long enough to put you into the REM cycle of sleep. So if you go to emilyafrancisbooks.com and you click on media, you can sign up and we'll send you an email with the night meditation.
Oh my gosh, I use that night meditation because just like you, I don't get the best sleep that they say you should get all this 8 hours sleep and you wake up, all the time happy and glowing. A lot of times I can't sleep very well. I've got different things I'm thinking of. So your meditation I found is really helpful.
Thank you.
So why don't you share with us, I know there's maybe one of the other pillars that really stands out for you that you think our listeners would really benefit from.
Mindset. Obviously movement, and I talk about this, that it's really hard to get moving when you haven't been moving, but I just want you to go in small increments. So taking a walk, none of this is to put a bunch of pressure on you. It's more just, this is a great way to approach your life. So attitude mindset to me is the big ticket item. And it's because learning how to become aware of really small things can change your whole health system inside your body. And it does help you to become more grateful. Like an easy example is that we have a magnolia tree in my front yard, and they've been all these tight buds, but none of them have bloomed. And then just between one day and the next, it was this big, full, open, beautiful bloom on one of the flowers. And I just noticed it because I was going to get the mail. And I thought, wow, that is so gorgeous. And I sat there and just wandered looking at it just in complete wonder of how gorgeous this was and how I could have missed it if I didn't come outside, and I keep track of my beautiful blooms day to day and how different they are because they're so subtle. And that's the same thing with all of it. Like, walking outside or even being inside, but outside more, taking that breath that makes your whole body come alive and that restarts the nervous system and reminds you that you are a living, breathing human on this planet right now in this time, and realizing that the earth and the world is so much bigger than us, and to be grateful that we're on the earth, human in this life at this time. That mindset will reactivate the cells in your body to program healthier. So if you are always looking at, there's three kinds of people: the people with the glass half empty, the people with the glass half full, and the other people that are just grateful to have a glass. I want to be a person that's grateful to have a glass. And some days it's going to suck. And some days your cup overflows. But it's being human and embracing the human part of your life that can help you become healthier, a healthier, more balanced version of you.
That's so important. I'm so glad that you shared that with us, especially now. I mean, we're just in this really chaotic time that people are feeling. And to be able, and they're just starting to open up some of the states where people can go out and be in parks and different places, or maybe it's a walk around the neighborhood. It doesn't have to be like you're going for a 10-mile hike, but
right.
Being out's so important.
Well, breathing outside air is important. And I talk about this, earthing, getting your shoes off and putting your bare feet to the ground, into the grass, into the dirt, 15 minutes a day gives your body electric nutrition from the electrons of the earth herself. And it changes the actual chemical makeup within your body. So there's even research that the higher up you are in a high rise, further away from the electrons of the earth, you're more susceptible to a heart attack and stroke and high blood pressure being further away from those electrons. So whether you live in a high rise, don't let me freak you out. Just make sure that you get downstairs and get to that grass, that ground, that dirt, that sand, whatever natural experience you can get near you. No concrete. Don't go walking around barefoot in concrete and think you're getting some sort of benefit. But get into the earth and you will change the internal structure with the electrons from the magnetic field of the earth.
I love that, and I've done some research into earthing too. And my goodness, what a huge benefit that is.
How sad that it has taken so many years to research and finally put science to what we already have always known, right? Science is so slow to catch up sometimes.
At least we're getting there.
We are getting there. And now, because it was fun to actually put real PubMed articles to the earthing in my book to really explain that this isn't just me being a hippie. This is real. It's been proven.
Yeah, I have a hard time seeing you as a hippie anyway.
Wow, really? That's so funny.
Well, and but it's really just common sense when we look at it, because we are so detached from the earth. You think that would be something that would really have a huge impact. And a lot of times people don't even consider that.
Yeah, it's very sad, actually. And you know what? I do have to say this. There was one part that was pulled from the book that I'm still really sad about, and that's the indigenous medicine, the Native American medicine. There is so much deep wisdom and knowledge in the Native American way of life, and their connection to the earth is like no other of any other culture in the world, in my opinion. And I was a little bummed that part came out, and I always feel like my job is to kind of put that part back in interviews because there's so much wisdom and magic to be found there. So anybody that's listening, I do highly encourage to study some of these indigenous tribes and cultures to help you find your love and connection to the earth again.
So let's talk about, and because you've got so much great information in your book, I mean, we're not even touching the tip of the iceberg here, but you do in your book talk about intentional breathing. And I'd love for you to explain what that is and why that's of benefit to us.
So I have so many things about this because there's a saying, where there's breath, there's hope. And in yoga, when they talk about pranayama, or the practice of breathing practices, they say you can cause or cure any disease through breath. And in the Taoist philosophies, they believe that you're born with a certain number of breaths, and how long or short you use them will determine the length of your life. Intentional breathing is to link your breath into the body and into the spirit and into the physical energy world that's around you. It changes the way that your body works inside, the lungs and all that. So all these years, especially little girls at puberty that are told to suck it in, we breathe opposite of the way that a baby would breathe. So when we inhale, the belly should expand like a balloon, like you're blowing up a balloon. And when you exhale, the navel should come back towards the spine. But most of the time, we breathe up and down where the shoulders rise. So out of the 100% of lung capacity, 80% of that comes from the diaphragm. And only 10% comes from the sternum in the middle of the chest. And the last 10% comes from the clavicle, the collarbones. So people that are breathing up and down, you'll see that they're only using 10 to 20% of lung capacity, which is very dangerous and doesn't oxygenate your blood. So when you breathe with intention to change the way that your body accepts breath, will change the mindset, the body, the way that your blood oxygenates, the health benefits. But it's also more than that too. I actually do a practice in this book that I really love, and it's to connect into the universe or your God source or whatever you want to name it, but I'm going to say God for now. I think of closing my eyes and I imagine God right over my head or in front of me. And I exhale and God inhales that breath. And then God exhales and I inhale that breath. And then we just go back and forth. Or you can do it with a tree because that's real. The tree gives you our oxygen and we give the tree the carbon dioxide and we go back and forth. But when you slow down and you start to do that imagery, your breath changes so profoundly that you immediately can understand what I'm talking about with intentional breathing. And one more thing on that before we move topics. Whenever people say, take a deep breath, we always do this giant inhale like we're about to go underwater. But if you really want to take a deep breath, the best thing to do is exhale all the breath that's already in your body to create a whole big pathway for that breath in. Because when we take a deep breath and we haven't released what's already inside, then we can feel really anxious with our breathing because we don't have a lot of space to utilize to get that oxygen in. So whenever you hear somebody go, all right, now take a deep breath. First, blow out. So if you watch like a professional swimmer, they get in the pool and they do this big exhale before they take that giant breath to get them across the pool. So I want you to change the way that you accept taking deep breaths and understanding that exhaling and then a nice deep inhale. And then if you add that ah sound, the AH, it signals to your nervous system to let go. That's it.
I love that. I love that. I was doing that as you were explaining it, and you can feel the release happen. And you're so right. When you like release the air from your body first and then take a deep breath.
There's an opening for it.
Yeah.
Now, as a side step, I am a lymphatic drainage therapist. That's my specialty, and I work on people post-cancer that have something called lymphedema. It's a chronic condition. But the lymphatic system is the only system in the body that's a negative system, meaning that you have to clear up all the avenues first before you treat the affected limb. So if you don't get the excess fluid removed, then everything comes to a backup. So if somebody has lymphedema in their leg and I start on their leg, all I'm going to wind up doing is putting a huge swelling at the top of the leg because there's no place for it to go. That's the same thing with breathing. It really is. So when people say, take that deep breath, and you have no avenue to really pull it in, then it becomes stressful. And I don't want to teach people stress breathing. I want to teach people that exhale is really the key place.
Now, can this practice also work for people who are in pain, maybe to help start to alleviate some of their pain?
Yes. You can either put your mind into your breath, or you can, if you're in a lot of pain and you can't get out of it, there are meditation ways to sidestep a little bit to the side of your physical body so that you don't have to be in the body so heavily. Or there's other people that would say, or you want to embrace it and experience the pain so profoundly and fully that the pain starts to disintegrate on its own, one way or the other. You're either a person that loves to get in that freezing cold water and jump in the hot bath back and forth and that extremist, or you can be somebody more like me who just likes to take a little sidestep and say, this is so ungodly painful that in order for me to deal with it, I'm going to sidestep a little bit and put my focus outside of my body and into something else. And into the breath is one of the healthiest ways that you can do it.
Okay, so I've never heard of anyone being able to kind of move yourself out of that pain situation, but that makes perfect sense, and I love that.
as long as you do it with intention, meaning that you come back. Because what happens is a lot of people, especially really spiritual people that start to engage in energy or knowing how to kind of move their center line of focus outside of their body a little bit, tend to not like to come back in. And then they lose touch with their body. And then they get out of sync with knowing when the physical is actually signaling that there's a problem, which is also part of what I talk about in the book, is understanding. I teach people in the book how to scan their body to feel if it's in the physical body or if it's in the emotional body or what it feels like in the energy body, or are we connecting into spirit, and then understanding with learning how to scan through your body, are we in our bodies all the way? Because really and truly, like when I go see my naturopath, he'll do something, he calls it a BBF treatment, but it's to get my body back in line with my brain, with my nervous system. Because sometimes it's kind of a little bit off the center line and you feel out of balance or a little wonky. It's because you're sort of not perfectly centered to the brain and spine, to the nervous system, to the nerve tracts that are signaling and moving throughout your body, and then the general awareness isn't quite in there. And that's something to kind of be aware of. So as I say, you can sidestep a little bit to avoid some of the pain. Like for me, when I go to the dentist, if I have cavities, I refuse to do Novocaine. So I use it as a meditation practice, and I remove myself from my mouth and take my energy someplace else. And the dentists are always blown away because I don't want to have Novocaine in my body. And they're like, I can't believe you could do that and put up with that kind of pain. But for me, it's a practice. And then when I leave, I can put myself back in and then feel like, oh, that did hurt a little bit, didn't it? It's not that I don't feel any of it. It's that it's not my point of focus.
Okay, so you're way better at that than me.
Well, it takes some practice. It takes some practice. I mean, I'm 45 and I started practicing Tai Chi and yoga when I was 23. And I learned a lot. I'd never had anybody speak about energy so freely. And Tai Chi is all about the energy body. You're moving energy. So I learned about my body in such a different way. And it's been so beneficial. I've carried that knowledge with me every day of my life since, and started to kind of play around with that and learn what's mine, what's yours. Because the other part is when you're like that, you can also feel other people's energy and mistake it for your own. So I even go through those meditations of scanning your internal body and then scanning the external around your body to make sure it's you or it's someone near you and not yours.
I'm so glad that you shared that because, there have been times just in my walk where I've had a very close, friend or family member, and I've actually felt pain that wasn't mine. And it took a while to kind of discern how that is. Most people don't even know to look for that. So to have a book that offers that, what a gift.
I feel honestly, now I love The Body Heals Itself, the whole muscle body. That's my big study. And that was the book before this one. This is the follow-up book. And it really is more than 20 years of gathering information and putting all of it for the reader. I really give you basically everything I know is in this book. And so that's why it's such a powerful resource book, because I have a show all about healing on Healthy Life Radio. So I interview people from around the world that do different sorts of healing practices, and also being a massage therapist and being in the hands-on healing world and experiencing so many different ways to approach our body in the name of health and healing. I give you every secret, every nook and cranny that I've ever come across in my life is really in this book. And in the back of the book are charts under the different aspects of the body for quick reference guides. And that's why I say this book, you're not going to sit down and read cover to cover. It's not a story. It's a resource reference book for you. And honestly, I think it should be everywhere and everybody should have one for them to be able to go, wow, you know what? Something's really off and I have no idea where to begin. This helps you create your path.
Okay, so I read the book cover to cover, so maybe I just didn't get the memo. It's a reference book. Well,
nobody says it's a reference book but me, but I still feel like it's a reference book. I feel like it's just research put down.
Well, I felt it offered a lot of information, and there's so much in there. So when I went through it, I was like, wow, okay, this is really cool. And you even have a chapter that talks about, how this can be used with parent and child relationships.
I do. I talk about the different relationships, parent to child, friendships, partner relationships. And I really get a lot of this because of my hands-on healing work. I hear people's secrets. So, I'm not a therapist. I'm a body worker, but I'm like a body therapist. So a lot of times people will engage with me in their secrets that their body has been holding on to that they've never talked about out loud. And through this, I started to realize how many people take it into their bodies thinking, what did I do wrong? Why did this happen? And it's not your fault. And so I think there's just a lot of information, and I do a lot of, this is what I can offer to you, is we need to be honest. If you have been keeping secrets, this is the time to come forward. But different relationships affect our bodies very differently. And we need to become more aware of that. I just don't feel like, all these years of therapies are usually about the mind, but we've missed that really crucial part about where your body plays. And that's who I am. That's where I come in. When a person, especially in trauma, it's so easy to use trauma as your example, but when a person has had a trauma, there's a lot of talk of they ejected from their body in order to survive it. But your body doesn't have an eject button. So your body is holding on to all the facts and all the truths and all the traumas as well. And it speaks more straight and to the point. So all these years of people going to therapy, which I still think is great, but we've missed the key portion, which is that your body plays a part in this too. And if you can learn how to dialogue and have better, stronger, and more healthy relationships with yourself and the people that play into your life, your body will change its tracks. So a lot of illness stems from not being honest with yourself or sharing the experience or feeling the feelings because we don't really know how to go through that. And so if you go through the body, you can release both in a more effective way faster because you're not leaving one behind. And it can help change your health. And what I feel like is, as a hands-on body worker, this is the part that I'm meant to play for people's healing and for health and for understanding, is that the secrets that you keep aren't just in your head, they're in your body. And so I talk about the different relationships, partner relationships, parent-child relationships, friendships, and I give you permission to know that if something has happened, it might not be your fault. Or if you're a person that constantly has issues with a lot of people, then I suggest going to see a counselor and figure out what part you're playing. And with parent-child, there's so many different dynamics with that. And if you're the child or if you're the parent, those are very different dynamics. So I'm coming at it from the place of listening to people's secrets and being the hands-on body worker for so long that I'm giving you permission to allow yourself the freedom to become honest and to learn your boundaries and to navigate your relationships differently. And I do believe that's the key to health, is to keep your body in this place, not just the mental focus.
I'm sure with the work that you do and all the people that you see, that you've been able to kind of really identify. It's like, okay, when this person has something that they're holding on to or holding back or pain that they won't let go, it's showing up in their body.
It's showing up, that was the foundation of the Body Heals itself, was what muscles. But since then, I have created something called the Somatic Emotion Chart. And in this book, Whole Body Healing, is where I lay it out. And the Somatic Emotion Chart is the emotions that your body experiences. Because if you look at like any of the counseling, psychology, psychotherapy, their feeling wheels and emotion wheels are really big. There's like all these different emotions that you can pull from, but your body doesn't have this big wheel. Your body feels trauma, shame, guilt, grief. Then there's an action bridge: suppress, which keeps you over on those heavy 4; process, which means you're willing to face these things before you make a decision; then release. Release takes you to the Fab 5, which is happy, joy, connected, and empowered. Those are the things that I can feel in your body. It's not a million different emotions. It's very, very finite.
I love that. You get to the root of the issue there,
Yes.
Let's not, feel everything. Let's just get to that root,
Let's get right to it and figure out, because there's body tracks. People talk about cellular memory, muscle memory, tissue memory. They all work together, but they're not the same and they don't store exactly the same way. But people that aren't paying attention to the body don't really care, and they just group it all together. But somebody like me, we have to understand muscle memory, and we have to understand cellular memory and tissue memory so that we can lay down the memory tracks differently in our bodies.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that with us. And I think I have time for one more question here. So, when we look at, everything that we've talked about, and we haven't covered everything that's in your book, but how does forgiveness play a part with this?
Forgiveness is huge, and here's why. We get lost thinking that to forgive means that we forgive another person, and that's just not true. Forgiveness is accepting the situation as it was, not your narrative, and then detaching and forgiving and becoming peaceful with the part you played. So if somebody hurt you, you don't have to forgive them in order for you to heal. You only have to forgive yourself for the role you played in it. And you have to be willing to look at this through an objective lens instead of the story you keep telling yourself. And so that's the really key little part of the statement. And I get this from my friend, Ashley Calloway, who's a spiritual counselor. She does a whole class on forgiveness. And that's the big thing that she talks about, is that forgiveness is accepting the situation as it was. That's the part that really changes what forgiveness is, because forever I thought, I'm just not a very forgiving person. Maybe it's because I'm a Scorpio. Maybe it's because of this. But it's because the forgiveness really has nothing to do with anybody but the part you play.
That has to be such a relief for people to hear, because a lot of times they're looking at people and go, you know what, well, this person, really added trauma to my life, or this person did this. If you were just focused on our piece, it makes it so much easier.
Exactly right. And it does. It changes the way that we view, because, I was wronged by somebody, and it was. I could play the victim all day. I probably played a big part too, but not quite the way they walked away from it. And for a long time, I kept thinking, how do I get to a place of forgiving them? And my Native American peace elder goes, you don't. You don't forgive them. They have nothing to do with this. They're not part of your forgiveness path. You are. And it was like, what? You mean I don't have to play the good girl that forgives everyone and pretends like it's all okay? And that was the other part, is forgiveness does not condone the action. And it doesn't mean that everything's okay. It just means that I've detached myself from the part that I played there, and I'm peaceful with what it was, but I'm no longer in it anymore. But the person that was involved in it, there's really not an attachment. I don't wish them harm, and I don't wish them well. I'm just indifferent. They're not there for it.
And how important is that? Because when you look at it, it's such a personal journey. And most of the time, people who have done real harm or even slight harm or trauma or whatever the issue is, they've gone on living their life. They have no idea that we are even having these issues. And if they do, they don't care.
Exactly. That was the other thing, is that we tend, at least somebody like me who's got some jaw issues, I tend to chew on the bone, and I replay stories a lot when I should have thrown them out quite some time ago. But when I meet other people that do the same thing, and I realize that maybe it was something that wasn't that important to me, and they've been playing it over and over, and I think, gosh, I've not even given it a second thought, and here you are making yourself crazy. And then I had to turn that on me and go, wow, how many times have I made myself completely nuts on a situation where the other person could not have even thought twice about it? It's a liberating thing to do.
Oh my goodness, Emily, we could talk about your book, Whole Body Healing, all day long. Where can our listeners connect with you, learn more about your book and your other books and the work that you do, and of course that meditation, and be part of your community?
Well, I would love it if you'd follow me on Instagram at Emily A. Francis Books. But my website will give you all the different social media pages, and you could email me direct, EmilyAFrancisBooks.com. So pretty much everything is Emily A. Don't forget the A, because there's a lot of Emily Francis's. EmilyAFrancisBooks.com.
Well, Emily, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Thank you so much, Marianne. I've always loved being on your show. You're so special and so beautiful and wonderful, and thanks for having me.
Well, thank you, Emily. It has been such a joy to spend this time with you, and of course, to talk about your new book, Whole Body Healing. Whole Body Healing is available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all indie retailers, and of course, you can get it on Kindle. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You're listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary. A recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Sunday, Monday, Thursday, and Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.